Hi, I'm Mike Kuipers van Lander. I'm a real estate sales consultant with Harcourts, and I'm fortunate to live and work in one of the most beautiful areas of New Zealand, Mount Maunganui. When I get some time away from selling property, a favourite pastime for myself and my family is sea kayaking. I'd like to share with you some short paddling trips around the area that I live. Firstly, a quick introduction for newcomers. Sea kayaking is a great hobby. It's a back-to-nature experience and great exercise at the same time. Once you have the gear, there's little ongoing cost. Boats can be bought second-hand for well under $1,000, and the rest of the gear needn't cost more than a few hundred. You'll need a good efficient roof rack carrying system, which will set you back perhaps another $500 to $1,000. If you're new or lack experience, the boat in the area you choose to paddle in is a critical factor if you're going to stay safe. I prefer sit-in rather than sit-on kayaks, as they are generally faster and you can brace yourself inside them, which makes for more efficient paddling and gives you better stability in rougher water. Here are some examples of plastic sit-in sea kayaks. The blue and white Perception Arcadia is an excellent beginner's boat. It's wide and therefore stable, it has a large cockpit and it's very light. The longer and narrower a kayak is, generally the faster it will travel, so because it's short and wide, the Arcadia isn't fast, however it will still get along at a reasonable speed. At 5.2 metres long, the green Current Designs Storm kayak here is one of the longest plastic boats around, and you can see it's narrower than the Arcadia. It's not as stable, but it's faster to paddle, so you can travel further quicker for less effort. It's heavier than the Arcadia, and of course needs more room to store at home. This yellow boat is a Challenge Breeze, 4.5 metres long and a good choice for a smaller paddler. There are countless models of kayaks available. Fiberglass boats are generally lighter for the same size and hold their shape better, but plastic's very popular due to durability and cost, and some of the new generation plastic material is as light or lighter than fiberglass. You'll of course need a paddle, spray skirt, life jacket, and I recommend a kayak pump and gloves. Get plenty of paddling experience in a safe environment before you tackle a more serious or remote trip. Joining a sea kayak club is a great way to start. Today I'm going for a short paddle up the Wairoa River on the western edge of Tauranga City. It's about 14 kilometres from where the river enters the harbour upstream to the Ruahihi power station, and all this length can be paddled as the river is fairly slow moving along this section. A good place to launch is next to the bridge on State Highway 2, where there is parking and a ramp. From here it's about 12 kilometres up to the power station, but I'm only going about halfway today, around 6 kilometres to an area just west of Tauranga and back. So here we are at the launch site by the Wairoa River Bridge. To the left here the river runs a kilometre or two out to the harbour. We're going upstream to the right. A short way upriver from the bridge is the Waimarino Fun Park here on the left-hand bank. It's all quiet today at this time of the year, but during the warmer months they host school parties during the week and the public on weekends. The river at this bend is often filled with people in kayaks and on the water slides having a ball. There's quite a bit of bird life on the river, shags in the lower reaches, lots of mallard ducks, and often a flock or two of scaup. Pukeko roam the banks, and harrier hawks are common overhead. The properties on the left-hand bank as we make our way upstream are mostly lifestyle blocks accessed off Moffat and Cambridge roads. Those on the right-hand bank are accessed off Wairoa Road, mostly lifestyle blocks in the lower part of the river, turning into farms higher up. The Wairoa is a good place for beginners and a great place to come if you find yourself with a few spare hours. Paddling most areas of the harbour requires careful planning with tides and weather, but the conditions have to be pretty poor to make this part of the Wairoa unsafe. There's not usually a lot of current, perhaps half a knot to a knot. The lower part of the river is tidal, so the level changes about 3 or 4 feet with the tide, but the state of the tide makes little difference for paddling. Today the tide's high, and being midwinter, the river level is about as high as I've seen it without actually flooding. Obviously you don't want to be here during flooding or heavy rain. I live across the other side of town, in the Mount, and from thinking about loading the boat onto the car to being back home with everything put away and a coffee in my hand is about 3 hours, of which around half is spent actually on the water if I'm doing the distance I'm doing today. Our destination is that dark pine-covered hill in the distance. The river makes a sharp left and then right S-bend turn there that marks the halfway point to the power station. Approaching this point, you can see the river curving away to the left. It's taken me about 35 minutes to paddle to here today. Not a bad time for a middle-aged recreational kayaker. The tailwind helped me along, and the high tide meant there was little current running down the river against me. There are those who can do it in half the time, of course, and good luck to them. Before we head back, I'm going to turn right and take a short detour into this stream that runs into the river at this point at the end of a steep little valley. This is actually my favourite part of this trip. You can paddle a couple of 100 metres up here to a set of tiny rapids. The water is deep and usually clear enough to see the bottom 6 to 8 feet down. Even when the wind is up on the river, it's always calm and peaceful in here. You could be miles out in the wilderness instead of just on the outskirts of the city, and it's just great to glide along through here, having a breather prior to your trip back. Having some form of communication is an important part of staying safe, and in my case, also an important part of my business, as real estate is a 24/7 occupation. I keep my mobile phone on the deck in front of me in a waterproof case that I can still use the phone inside of for taking texts and calls, like now. Be mindful that mobile coverage is often not great in valleys and more remote areas. When the river is lower, there's a sandy beach here on the left. It's a good place to stop, stretch your legs and have a tea or coffee if you bring a thermos, but the level of the river means it's several feet onto the water today. As I head back, just to prove there's no such thing as a free lunch, the breeze has continued to strengthen, and so the puffs that helped speed me along on the trip out are now right in my face, making for a slower journey back. The return trip is usually a little faster than the trip out due to the current, but probably not today. Unless perhaps I speed up the video.